Hello and welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode number 368, and today we're going to take a look at some international news that may or may not have made the headlines, most likely not. But here we go. Starting here in Mexico, where cartels associated with the Jalisco cartel, which operates out of the Chihuahua state in Mexico, is now being accused of killing pregnant women. What they do is they lure them in, they perform a C-section, and then kill them, and then sell the kids for an average of $14,500 to U.S. couples. Well, they're resourceful, if nothing else. Moving over to Great Britain across the pond, reports are out that more than half the population of the United Kingdom is now reliant on the state for some kind of aid. There are 35.8 million beneficiaries of government largesse, and there are people who pay into it. That means that 53.3% of the population of the United Kingdom are recipients, not payers. Well, you've heard about George Soros. Well, maybe we should look into this guy. This is Christopher Hohn, Hohn, and he's a British billionaire. Over the past 10 years, he has injected over $553 million into the United States for radical green energy. He's also known as the biggest donor to Extinction Rebellion. Those are the idiots who get cans of tomato soup and throw them on Van Gogh paintings to make their point. Well, this one you may have heard about, and this is Peter North. He's from Great Britain, and he was arrested. I mean, they threw the guy in a van in the middle of the night and took him in and then made him walk home from the police station. He was arrested for posting something on social media, basically, that said, "Fuck Hamas." He was arrested on suspicion of inciting public disorder. So saying "fuck Hamas" is inciting public disorder in Great Britain. But Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, says that people are lying about his country, and this as he laid out a digital ID plan, which would mean that you cannot work in the United Kingdom without a digital ID, and every citizen would need one. And talk about Big Brother there. But, it's all free speech over there in Great Britain, right there. Speaking of which, reports are showing that this 16-year-old who was at an anti-immigrant rally recently, a police officer pulled a British flag away from her while several Palestinian flags were allowed to fly freely. This happened in Newcastle, and the young lady was only 16 years old at the time. And they're talking about two-tier policing in Great Britain. So you can't fly a British flag or the St. George's flag, but go ahead, hang up that Palestinian flag. Shabana Mahmood, who is some minister over in Great Britain, she wants migrants to learn English. Further, anybody who will be granted permanent asylum cannot have a criminal record. They must work, pay into the insurance system, and receive no benefits. This is all in anticipation of thwarting the Reform Party led by Nigel Farage over in Great Britain. And the Reform Party is very anti-immigrant. Speaking of which, immigrants in Great Britain. All right, so this is some kind of, well, he lives in Great Britain, and he's a TikTok quote-unquote star. He's also an Afghan refugee who says he can't go back to Afghanistan out of fear of being persecuted, and maybe he'll be beheaded by the Taliban or something. Anyway, he's recently, this picture, he actually put this online. He's vacationing in, you guessed it, Afghanistan. So he can't go back there because he's going to be killed, but he can vacation there. The police in France, in Calais, raided a warehouse where 100 Sudanese refugees who wanted to make the trek across the English Channel to Great Britain from France were rounded up and the encampment was taken down by the police. This only after a British publication highlighted the encampment. All right, this guy on the left there, his name is Jordi Gukara, and he's from Central Africa. He's in France. He managed to rape two females, one of them on the left, on the right there, 45 minutes apart in an upscale area of Paris, the capital of France. To add insult to injury, he had 12 previous convictions, a couple of them for sexual assaults, and he was under 3 deportation orders, none of them enforced. In neighboring Germany, the AfD party lost mayoral elections in the western part of that state in the North Rhine-Westphalia district. They were expected to maybe win because they were in a runoff, but they were beaten back. Speaking of the AfD party, Andreas Rosenfelter, a official in the established parties, the Christian Democrats and something else over there, he says that in Germany, he's warning against the AfD, saying that they want a completely different country. The problem is, polls out of Germany show that people want a completely different country, as in less Muslim refugees and North Africans from shithole countries. In the federal state of Holstein, in the northern part of Germany, they've decided they're going to recognize Islamic holidays. This after they made an agreement or a treaty with several Muslim groups that were over there. Now Muslims can take off with pay during Ramadan and for their many Eids. In Berlin, 50,000 people showed up to protest the end of the war in Gaza, yelling, "Free Palestine," wearing those stupid scarves around their necks and whatever. But they also want an end to any German military aid to Israel and further European Union sanctions on Israel for the execution of their war in Gaza. All right, this is Boris Pistorius. He is the German defense minister, and he's vowed to invest $41 billion in space defense over fears of Russian and Chinese aggression. And Russia and China have recently beefed up their satellite operations in Western Europe. A Bavarian broadcaster is suing the government, calling a fee that she has to pay a propaganda tax. Now, they have an equal time rule over there where anybody who has a broadcast, they have to broadcast diverse viewpoints. Apparently, she didn't. She was... initially, the lawsuit was dismissed, but a larger court, a higher court, decided that they were going to let the lawsuit go forward because, quote unquote, it's an important issue. In Austria, Austrian court has decided that any planned integration must treat all Austrians equally. That is, Austrians must be treated to the recent influx of migrants from shithole third world countries. Basically, what the Austrian government is proposing is that migrants must learn German and Austrian values. Until then, their allowances from the state will be reduced until they can prove they can speak German and they've assimilated into Austrian culture. But this court says now Austrians also must assimilate into Austrian culture and must learn German, which is kind of weird. Anyway, this is Emmanuel Brunnesholz. He's 57 years old. In 2022, he posted on Facebook that there's only 2 sexes. He admitted to it when he was arrested by police and then convicted of a hate crime for stating that there are only 2 sexes. Well, he refused to pay the fine out of principle, and now he's been jailed. free speech German style. But it could be worse because this priest in Spain went on a broadcast in 2017 and said that Islam was spread by the sword, not by the word, unlike Christianity. For this, and he actually quoted from the Quran for this. He's also had a couple of other postings about Islam and taking over the culture of Spain. But he was arrested for inciting violence against Muslims, and for that, he now faces 3 years in jail. He's currently on trial. Good news, the Slovakian parliament voted in a constitutional amendment which specifies that there are only two genders and that the European Union cannot overrule their national constitution in this area to preserve traditional values. This sets up a clash with their overlords in Brussels in the European Union. It has the effect of parenthood is defined in biological terms, and it furthers rights of parents in the education of their children. Hungary's foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó, recently told a panel that free immigration brings in bad people, and among those bad people are terrorists. Hungary will not change their policies and give in to UN or EU demands in this area. Meanwhile, in Hungary, there are warnings against hate speech. 50,000 protesters showed up in Budapest arguing that they are against posters being plastered all over Hungary in favor of Viktor Orban. Elections don't occur until 2026, and Orban has said he is not backing down on shoring up Hungary's borders against migrants from shithole third world countries. Recent drones were sighted over airports in Denmark, and they're accusing it of being a hybrid attack on their infrastructure. There was no direct attack, they were just flying over it. Maybe some of those drones from New Jersey or something a few months back in November of 2024. Anyway, they notified NATO, and NATO, I don't think they actually invoked Article 4 of the NATO Charter. About the Danish Prime Minister, shown here, she's off to Greenland to apologize to indigenous women there for forced contraception, where they were actually, against their will, had IUDs inserted into their uteruses without permission. So, I guess they wanted to depress the indigenous population in Greenland. I don't know. Maybe they should be part of the United States. Anyway, in Finland, Muslims are pissed off about a possible burqa ban being proposed by the legislature there. 40 organizations, and I thought there were 40 Muslim organizations in frickin' Finland, of all places, that would be up in arms about this. Anyway, the Finnish government says that there's no place for face coverings, headscarves, and burqas in schools in Finland. Several pro-Kremlin propagandists, they are now siding with President Trump, and agreeing that Russia cannot win the war in Ukraine. They say that Russia lacks the necessary manpower to win. Now, according to a lot of statistics, I think it's like 1,030 Russian soldiers are killed every week for gaining 0.03% of the land of Ukraine. So maybe they have a point, and maybe they have a further point, because the United States is threatening to send Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine in their war against Russia. Russia has warned the United States against this action. Now, these missiles, which are cruise missiles, can strike 1,000 miles into Russia. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for Vladimir Putin, says that they're going to take appropriate action, whatever that means. I guess they're going to threaten nuclear war again. And speaking of that lack of manpower, Kenya recently broke up a ring of 20 people operating to hire Kenyans to fight for Russia in Ukraine. The human trafficking ring was run out of Kenya. I mean, can you imagine Ukrainian soldiers and a bunch of Kenyans come across the border and they're like, where the fuck did these black people come from? And set them back for a second. President Donald Trump says that he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. He says enough is enough. Netanyahu and the government in Israel were throwing out suggestions of the possibility of an annexation of the West Bank after countries like France, the United Kingdom, and Australia recognized the Palestinian state. Now, whether the West Bank will become that Palestinian state, we don't know, but, quite frankly, there is no Palestine. It's called Judea and Samaria. And the Thunberg flotilla, 40 boats were seized and turned back by the Israeli Defense Forces. Greta Thunberg, the little Swedish retard, is complaining about how she's being treated by the Israelis. By the way, there was no aid found on any of those boats, so it was all just a big publicity stunt by the little retard. She can't complain about climate change because that's so passé these days. So she took up the cause of Gaza, and I suppose when she's done with that, it will be transgender rights because, she's halfway there anyway. The United States has agreed to at least $675,000 in aid to Cambodia, despite a cutback in foreign aid for demining in that country. And Cambodians are very well known in their prowess in getting rid of landmines. Between 1970, this is amazing, between 1970 and 1998, there have been over 4 to 6 million landmines planted in Cambodia. 20,000 people have been killed and 45,000 injured. So I say this is money well spent because they don't only operate in Cambodia. These Cambodians also go to foreign countries and demine. China is targeting social media applications that exaggerate negative and pessimistic sentiments. They said that they want to rectify negative emotions. God knows what this will involve. Speaking of China, a film out of Australia has been altered showing the marriage of a gay couple to make them a straight couple. They were digitally re-imaged using artificial intelligence. And by the way, this was a horror film out of Australia. So there's some conversion therapy for you. They literally converted a dude back into a chick to make the marriage look normal. Proposed Chinese ethnic unity laws being called out by some human rights organizations that it would repress minorities even more than they're repressed in China. One of the things is that it would repress and erase language rights. Not only that, it would apply to Chinese citizens abroad. And finally, in Sweden, meet the Green Women. Green Women are teenage girls who are hired to make bombs over social media. Why teenage girls? Because they're the least likely to attract attention from the authorities when they purchase bomb-making material at their local hardware store. And they're considered green women, green girls, as in green newbies. And the cops don't look at them the same way that they look at teenage boys when making bombs. Anyway, that's it for today. Have a great day and a more pleasant tomorrow.